I was trying to figure out what to do with my kids for the final unit of the year, and you know how it is, coming up to vacation, you need something a little extra engaging, and so I decided to do RSA videos. It wasn't just a random choice. One of the things I did is in my head is I kind of questioned what were some of those skills they still needed work on, and what I saw is that anytime they read, whether it was a textbook or primary source, one of the weaknesses that they had was they saw each fact, each paragraph as separate and individual. They weren't able to link together what they were reading into one chain of events or make connections to one overall concept. The other thing I saw them doing was that whenever they'd read words, they were just simply words. They weren't picturing in their head what was going on. So if they read that someone traveled to France, they just suddenly showed up in France and really didn't think about the time period and what would be involved. And so I decided to do RSA Animate videos. The topic that I decided to do, I needed something that was pretty straightforward, and also because of the lack of time, I ended up just using their textbook. It was a 4-page chapter in their textbook. I realized that we only had 5 or 6 days to finish this. We had a big holiday coming up that they would all be focused on, so I needed something kind of just short and sweet that would be very straightforward, and so we ended up doing the Louisiana Purchase. I know there's lots of different things you can do with the Louisiana Purchase. Again, we did a very basic, covered very basic information on it. After the kids read the 4 pages in the textbook, they literally made 10 steps in their notebooks, and they had to break the section into the 10 most important parts. Now, as they wrote down each point on a step, it had to be 10. I had done this previous to them, so I knew that 10 would be an appropriate number. Some kids had 9. Underneath each step, they wrote down 3 important facts for each thing. They had to make a connection between each step. So in order to go to step 2, they had to find the connection. We talked about how the facts were supporting the steps, and just like in real life, if you don't have good support, you will fall through. We also talked about how each point needs to connect to one another, because again, just like in real life, if one step is not connected to the other, you'll fall through, and just like your story, the story will end up falling through and your reader won't be able to follow you from point to point. On day 2, when they came in, they had to doodle each fact that was underneath each step. So they took a look at their 10 steps. They took a look at how they were all connected. They took a look at the facts underneath each, and then they decided what images they would need in order to make their story come alive. Now at this point they had read the chapter, they had created the 10 steps, they had done their facts, so they pretty much had recycled through the information 3 times. So by this point they really knew the story. So by the time they were done, they had approximately 30 images. Some groups, well, most groups I would say ended up having more, because for some of the facts they had multiple images, or kind of 3 or 4 images to tell the story. A lot of the kids said they couldn't draw, but as long as you label each thing, it makes sense to the viewer. And so anything that they had, they didn't have to have pictures that really was able to bring it out into the viewer's head what they were talking about, because they knew they were going to be narrating and they knew they were going to be able to write things. On day 3, we had a dress rehearsal just for images. They went out with whiteboards, they went out with huge pieces of paper, and they attempted to do their whole story full size and in real time. I don't know any advantages between the whiteboard and paper. I think the paper might have had an advantage because they couldn't erase, so they were able to see their whole story at the end. But a lot of kids realized that they were going to have to add images as they were going along, just to make certain points in their story connect better to the viewer. A lot of kids said they couldn't draw, and so I did a picture on the board of a bunny, and then I did a picture of a board of a bobcat, and basically said, as long as you tell the viewer what it is, they'll believe it. We also practiced just with labels, just to make a point that if you wanted to make Jefferson and you put Jefferson next to it, people would believe it's Jefferson. So whatever you wrote next to a picture, that's what people would end up seeing. And sometimes they needed labels or captions to make their point come alive. They also sometimes had to think in terms of 3 or 4 pictures. So if they wanted to get travel to France across to a viewer, they might have needed more than just a boat. It was absolutely necessary to do the dress rehearsal with the images before filming. Don't even think of skipping it. So on day 4, we filmed the videos. And these kids did an incredible job, because you have to realize that they only had about 30 minutes to film these, and so maybe they had 1 or 2 times where they could restart the video, but otherwise it was one take. Some kids put the paper on the ground and held the camera above it. Some kids did it on the whiteboard and held the camera out. A couple kids put it on the tripod. Everybody kind of figured out their own system. And I reminded them, you can talk. Kids can talk during the filming because the audio will eventually get wiped out. And again, 30 minutes is not a lot of time. Basically, everyone was able to do it once or twice and pick their best one. It was very important when the people were filming, and I didn't really get this until the end, that what was being filmed was not these tiny little things in the camera viewer, but that they zoomed in and came closer to the picture so it filmed the whole screen, or so it filled the whole screen. On day 6, whoops. See, one of the benefits of this is that you get to erase, and there were no mistakes. But if they did make a mistake, you would have to keep going. They didn't have time to redo retakes and retakes. So, just like here, we'll keep going. We wrote the scripts after doing the pictures, and I still don't know whether that's a good or bad idea, but it was important to remind them that they're not writing an essay, they're writing narration, and they could not write bullets, because the kid reading the script would not also be able to look up at the screen at the same entire time when doing the narration. So they had to write exactly what they were going to say. There's just simply no other way around it. So on day 6, on day 6 they came in and they recorded their narration. I had the projector up in front and it projected their video up on the screen, and I had 2 computers set up. And so as they recorded on one computer, the other computer was saving videos, and then we flip-flop back and forth. One person would be reading the script, one partner would be helping them along, telling them where they were. This was incredibly difficult and stressful because they only had 5 minutes to record their script, and the speed was 5 times faster than the last time they had seen it. So it was amazing how well they did. Supplies, we needed a lot of supplies for this. We needed at least 12 whiteboard markers. I have classes of 27 kids, and we had about 10 groups in each class. We needed 6 boxes of regular markers for the kids who wrote on paper. We had 4 rolls of masking tape so they can tape stuff up everywhere as they practiced, a giant roll of paper, and pre-cut the sheets so you're not cutting it in the middle of class. And we had 10 cameras that were available to us, and a universal card reader, and make sure it can do the micro SD cards that are found in cell phones. We also had 2 bottles of cleaner. If I did this again, I would have stolen every bottle of cleaner I can get my hands on and done 1 per group, and lots of rags. Lots of rags. Don't do paper towels, get rags. So in the end, I think overall, we loved the RSA videos. Because just simply they're so cool to watch afterwards, and it doesn't matter how bad a drawer you are or how good. In the end, they all ended up well done. And what was even better is it allowed the kids to end up making connections and see the connection between everything that they were reading. And I highly recommend, you have got to do a video yourself, because you can sit in front of your kids as the big teacher telling them what to do and trying to get inside their heads, but until you do one yourself, you will never understand how difficult it is. And by joining with them and doing it together, you'll really be able to coach them through this process a lot easier.